Hi there. Welcome to Managing Your Perimeter. Together with PJ O'Neill today, Mel Lukens is flying back from London, so we'll get him on the next one. Um, I'm on a reel, and we are going to be speaking to Dan Donovan. Now, I would love to give you a background on who he is and what he does, but to be quite honest, in this particular instance, I want Dan to tell us everything because what you're going to find out, listeners, is that our worlds are very, very similar. While we focus a lot of things on the government side, he has been able to do things in the sports world. And again, I'm going to let him dive into that. But my point is, this is just to tell you that what we do happens all over the place and you don't realize it. You don't realize it. These companies are out there doing this. And while we have been very lucky and very blessed to be one of two companies doing things with the government, I'm looking at Dan's world and I'm like, yes, this is good. This is what I like to see. So, PJ, real quick, I'm going to say hello to you and then we're going to toss it over to Dan. So, PJ, what's up? What are you doing these days?
Hey, I'm good to see you guys. I'm in Atlanta right now. Went to visit. My son wanted some cousin time, so I went to visit my mother-in-law, former mother-in-law, whatever she's referred to as. And then we're going up to visiting with some friends in Atlanta, and then heading up to the cabin for the weekend
Oh,
in North
nice.
Georgia, and then home early next week.
Very good. Very good. When does school start?
The 27th, but hockey tryouts are the 22nd and 23rd.
Got it. Yep. You're in your busy time. Sophomore this year? Is he a sophomore?
Sophomore this year. Yep.
Very nice. Very, very good.
And very fortunate. I told you about his speeding ticket on spring break, but I apparently Google blessed me with the right lawyer in Indiana, and so it was moved to a non-moving violation
Very nice.
from 26 miles per hour over the speed
Oh,
limit. Yeah,
DJ, seriously. Come
yeah,
on.
I wasn't paying attention. My fault
Yeah.
with a permit driver.
Did you get the lecture when that happened?
Oh, I got yelled at more than he did by the state patrol, by the state policeman. Yes, very much so.
I'm sure. I'm
Some
sure.
28-year-old kid yelling at me.
But rightly so, sir. Rightly so.
100%, 100%.
Works. So anyway, so Dan, a little bit of background on us. PJ and I have been working together, God, forever. Um,
13 years.
Yeah, working together for 13 years. We met. I have a background in doing production for festivals and concerts. PJ's background is doing advanced work with the government, but together, we came together with our actual competitor, um, doing security perimeters for the NSSE. So all of the events at the presidential level. And
Right.
we then decided to put the company together and we have now done this and have been, again, very blessed and lucky to have won all of these task awards that we've been able to, make work and everything. So and the government and hopefully keeping the government very happy. So anyway, I am going to toss that to you now, and please tell us all about yourself. Thank you for coming. Thrilled to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Look, I come at it from a little different perspective. I built my career at the crossroads of coaching. I coached college football a long time ago, live events with Olympics and Super Bowls and entrepreneurship and, background that really taught me to design event security around the guest experience and operational reality of the problems and the challenges that, we've been facing for a number of years, but, even more so today. So today I lead a company called Stratoscope Partners. And in that umbrella of companies, we have Stratoscope, which is the large consulting entity that does all the strategic planning, puts the plans together, the operational leads out there. And then we become the general contractor for the event. We contract if perimeter fencing was needed, or video surveillance, or canine, or weapons detection, police, all of the and contract security bodies to really enforce that posture that's necessary for that particular event. Also owning Gressotech, which is our weapons detection company, latest in AI and weapons detection systems like the Evolve Express and Chea OpenGate and and Evolve's Expedite product. And then I recently this year bought a canine company, Ford Canine, and they're the leaders in training and certifying and consulting on canine handlers and dogs. And we've launched Stratos Canine, which is the deployment of those expert handlers and dogs. So we've got a large team. We're very happy with the success we've had in the event space, special event space, and business conference space is one of the areas that we really focus on. But I come at it from a non-law enforcement perspective. I never carried a badge or a gun, and most of all of my key full-time staff are the same. We really look at things from a proactive perspective, and how do we strategically put a plan together to really meet the event's objectives, right? Because a little different than an NSSE event, and I've worked some. You have all the resources you need at your disposal for events that get that that designation. I mean, I've done 13 Super Bowls, and it's amazing the amount of resources that come together because of that tag that they get. So it is a little different, but we're all in the same game. We're all trying to keep people safe and protect lives at whatever event that we're doing.
I love it. I love it. I've always been fascinated by the sports side of things. I never really thought too much about the corporate side, big sales events. But looking back, that's kind of how I first got into it, because my dad, when he retired, or before he retired, used to run all those events for his company, which back then was Dean Witter, Morgan Stanley. And so we went, Puerto Rico or Palm Springs, and they always had, name bands, not any, like Hootie was a big one for them back in the day. But I never even considered the operational side of it. I just like doing it,
Yeah.
But how did you guys how did you pick that? How did you get to that?
Well, not sure how I landed here.
And do you regret it?
No, I love what we do. But before, we talk about getting into that kind of business conference space, think about it, New York City in November, a public facing event being a shareholders meeting. Agenda is known, speakers are known, and a CEO dies on a sidewalk. Yeah. Right? Because they took the approach that, well, this is a shareholders meeting. I don't need anything more than a guest list and a stage and an agenda. And, then you look into, what happened with Brian Thompson and what was going on with that company. And you go, wait a minute, you guys missed a lot here, because there were real threats to that company and to that individual, but they didn't even treat that shareholders meeting the way we would treat, a conference, or even, PJ, your example of, when your dad was with Witter, like listen, there's events held around this country all the time that we're not taking serious enough to put the right posture around it.
Yeah, understood. And when you are, all right, so let's just sort of back up just a minute. So when you're going into these events and everything, are you, who are you meeting with? I know neither one of us have law enforcement backgrounds either. I mean, we just work with law enforcement. Are you meeting, is that who your stakeholders are? Is it law enforcement, and is it, security there? Like, who are you working with to figure out what that plan is going to look like when you go into an event?
Our core customer is the event owner. If I've got to work with a promoter, we get hives. But the event owner, it's really important, because I want the event owner, and I want the event owner that truly cares about the safety and security of their guests, their VIPs, their talent, whether it's that, A-list talent or B-list talent, you still have that opportunity for crowd crush and everything that goes along with it. So we work with, sometimes it's the strategic events team or the marketing team within that company, or we're with their corporate security team. And some of these companies have event security professionals as part of their corporate security team now. So a lot of our tech clients, the Salesforce, Google, Workday, they have full-time employees that are responsible for the policy that they're going to set for their events.
Mhm.
And then they reach out to us as the arms and legs to go and develop the plan that enforces that policy, depending upon the type of event that they're putting on. And so that's our customer, I think, and I think I answered your question.
Yeah. No, totally. And also when you're so do you focus mainly on the personnel side of things or do you actually provide the assets, I guess, is what, when they ask you to put the plan together, is it at that level or is it on the ground level?
W- We start as early as we can in the planning process with the team on designing the overall space.
Hmm.
Regardless, we're going to Convention Center X. We're going to have a concert at Chase Center or Allegiant if we're in Vegas or San Francisco, right? So we start as early as we can with the planning team because what happens is you let the marketing and production team go, and they're going to have people coming in every other door,
Yeah.
and you're not going to be able to get people into a posture where you can actually screen and you can keep people, and manage the process. So we start as early as we can in the planning process with them, and then we develop that plan. Then we go and contract the pieces and parts to deploy the plan and bring the team out to manage all of that. And even a business conference, we are very ambitious to make sure that we have a true event ops center that is the decision making body for that event.
Mhm.
Because look, we're all in the event business, right? Every event gets judged by how quickly you respond to problems, right? Every event you expect there's going to be some problems. If you guys were involved in the inauguration, you had weather this last inauguration, and pretty soon you had to pivot, and everything had to go indoors. Production had to change. This had to change. That had so people when they go to live events, I think they expect, hey, there's going to be challenges, transportation, ingress, egress, whatever it happens to be. As organizers, if we're connected with the right decision makers,
Mhm.
make decisions quickly to fix those small problems before they become big problems. And so that integrated ops center, it's really something I developed for the NFL back at Super Bowl 39. I dragged Jim Steig kicking and screaming. And I said, your butt's going to be right here in this ops center with all this video. And you're going to be in radio communications to all the key decision makers out on the ground. We're going to bring other decision makers in this room. And he's like, Dan, there's no way you'll get me to sit there for the game. You're going to be there. I'll handcuff you to that chair.
Mhm.
Because what happens, as you've seen, is you get key decision makers out fighting fires, and they could be dealing with a little trash can fire over here when they got a dumpster burning, on the other side of the venue.
We totally understand that. And I can't believe you just said Super Bowl 39 is exactly the one I worked on.
Oh,
Um,
great.
I was working for the city of Jacksonville. I got hired directly by the city of Jacksonville to come in. I've lived in Ponte Vedra for 2.5 years, out in
Awesome.
summer. Yeah, literally, I'm like, and I'm moving, and so the Super Bowl football that usually sits behind me is in my new unit. But that's funny that you said that one. No, totally get that. And but I guess what I'm trying to also understand is and yes, we did do the inauguration, so I'm very aware of the
Right.
weather that changed everything in less than 36 hours. So because at
I
our
was in front of the screens in the op center.
well, I was gonna say, so the 2 things that you touched on, one is, when you do have the changes, and everyone needs to figure out how to pivot, and you pivot as a group, right? And so our role in that particular instance, and we will use, the inauguration as the example. When we find out that they're gonna pivot, we get pulled into our client's office with the hundreds of law enforcement and city officials and public works people that are involved in it, and we help them decide how we can make those changes efficiently and productively and safely. And there are times, and actually it was one of the first times probably in my career speaking to our client that they were asking to make a change, and we had just literally been building for, a good 3-4 days. And they said, well, what if we change it to this and we do that in 24 hours? And I said, I can't do it. I said, I can't
Right.
do it because I don't have the manpower. It's snowing. You've shut the city down. I can't get people in here. There is no labor to do this. And to be honest with you, they don't have the mental capacity to keep going for another 24 hours. So I'm
Right.
going to have to respectfully tell you, we've got to figure something else out. And it was the first time that I have to say this to our client. And I'm telling you, it was, it was definitely one of those things. The other side to that is the communication center that you're referring to. We put someone from our staff, and in most cases it has been PJ, that is working with all of those people that can make a decision, that is sitting there watching all the screens as you referred to. And anything that has to change, the information comes down to me, and or then I disseminate it accordingly to all the vendors that are in touch with it. But it
Right.
definitely works the exact same way. There's as they call the MAC center, multi-agency
Multi-agency coordinating center.
coordinating
Yeah.
center. It's what we put in place, and we are always a part of that as well. So, again, I'm continue to be fascinated as this conversation goes on about how everything runs so parallel in, all these other worlds. Um, I had the luxury of going to, and the hard part of being asked to go to Prague and put together a security plan for a Bitcoin company. And they were very nervous about, people getting into their event. It was 1,800 people, but I had 40 buses, coming from a convention center to a private location in Prague. And so, I had to go on the ground ahead of time, put together the schedule, and their security team was a former Black Ops person. And so, I figured out how to communicate with him so he understood that I understood what he needed, right down to the diagrams. And the minute he saw that, his comfort level increased, and that I was very thankful to have done the years and years of work that we've done with our client, to be able to communicate that well with him. And I'm sure that, again, no law enforcement background, but when you work around it enough and you put yourself in the middle of these things, and you're in enough room with 100 people who need to make these decisions, and we're making them, on a dime kind of thing to be able to spin it, you learn, and I'm sure that that's where you've
Sure. taken
taken your business. So,
Look, a very recent, scenario when we did the inaugural Formula One in Las Vegas,
mm,
and you know, we were appointed, and we're working with the organizing group, and I get a call that the sheriff wants to meet me, and Sheriff McMahill, Las Vegas PD, phenomenal. I mean, from an event perspective, they do a phenomenal job. But I got called to the principal's office, and he literally is like, "Who are you?" And
mm,
you know, what have you done in Las Vegas? And what have you? And I'm like, Sheriff, listen, here's what we do, and here's how we do it. But let me tell you, I can only do this much. You have this much, right? You've got the whole city to manage. I'm going to take care of the fan zones. I'm going to need your people to help make sure that that goes really well. But I can only manage the privatized spaces, which is where the guests that have tickets come. There's so many other people in the city that are there for Formula One that don't have tickets, and that's, frankly, that's your problem. I mean, obviously, we're going to share every plan we can. He was tough on us, but the same thing, it was, all right, let me understand your planning. And we'd already worked with, his special events guy, Lieutenant Bell, and their team, and they vouched for us, but he literally was like, I don't know you. And he's used to just security guard staffing companies. He's like, I know this guard company. Like, listen, a guard company's not going to do what we do,
mhm.
right? We need them. They're going to provide the bodies, but they're not strategic thinkers. They're not decision makers that's going to pull this plan together and make sure that we can adjust as needed. And in the end, I think he became a fan. His deputies did, and we had a great event. It went phenomenal.
I like that. Yeah, that's a big event. That's a massive one. So,
Yeah. And that's leading to all the other ones. Are you popped in on any of the other cities that are from F1 or was just the inaugural?
No, it's Las Vegas was unique because it was the first time in Las Vegas, and F1 had never run a race like this where they were open and closing the track every day
Yeah.
because the track, circled downtown, or not downtown, but the casino area of Las Vegas. And so you had to let the city breathe in between rehearsals and events or races. F1 had never done it. Las Vegas had never done it. These other sites, like down in Miami, and I was the design consultant on Hard Rock Stadium's, 3-year renovation, and I know that team very well. But they've got a full-time team that's running football games and tennis and everything else they do down there. And so they just adds that team for the race. And that's kind of consistent with a lot of the other, the Austin track. That track runs year round. So we really are the special event team that comes in for that one-off greenfield type location. Even though I wouldn't call Las Vegas a greenfield, it was a greenfield for that race because nobody had built 200,000 seats to put around those streets of Las Vegas and sell tickets and have that kind of experience. So a convention center is the same way for us, right? You walk into a convention center, you get the shell. And it's not like the convention center has this robust security team that's going to go and deploy your event security needs. So that's where, getting back to your original question, PJ, is, we found this niche after doing, being involved in the Olympic Games more on the event side and then the crisis management side, and then Super Bowls on the contingency side and the planning side. And, we found this niche that there's a demand for this special event industry where they don't have what Joe Coomer at Mercedes-Benz Stadium has as a full-time security team and all of the staff that he gets for all those Falcons games, Atlanta United games, and all the concerts he runs. He doesn't need us. He uses us for some consulting, but he doesn't need a team like ours to come in. He can handle it. It's really that special event that says, once a year, twice a year, or whatever, we go to location X. It's a shell or it's a field, and we need somebody that can pull that plan together.
It's so cool. It's what's been your favorite event that you've done, or a favorite client, or what's your give me a highlight.
Oh, I mean, listen, the Super Bowls are always a very exciting event. And, I tell people if they've never been to a Super Bowl, the game day experience is above any other. And that moment of kickoff and people hold up, they used to, it used to be the lighters at concerts. Now they hold up their phones with the light. It still sends chills up your neck, right? That the Super Bowl is kicking off. And we had, so many interesting challenges in the games I was involved in, starting in Jacksonville, where, pregame, all of a sudden we've got water coming up in the service level, and the hallway between the two locker rooms and the field tunnels is like that much water. You got players with cleats and cement, and that's not a good mix with water. And then that water problem, we got it under control for introductions, getting the teams out. And then we're getting to post game, and all of the hoses that fire department and water department brought in to suck the water out is laying across like major egress lanes, and it's dark and there's not lighting out there. And now you're rallying to figure out how you're going to keep people from leaving the game and tripping to the lights going out in New Orleans at the Super Bowl, and that pit in your stomach that happens. Super Bowls will always stand out as some of the favorite experiences. But I love what we do for our tech clients. I mean, I've done, Salesforce is a huge company. They have a massive event called Dreamforce every year, and I've done 10 of them. And it's a great client. They're the production company. It's always at Moscone Center, so there's a little bit of rinse and repeat, even though it changes pretty much every year. But you shut down a city block, and they're very progressive. They want that stadium level security for a 3-day business conference in a temporary space. And so it's a huge lift. And honestly, it's a lot of fun for our team to pull it together.
I think we came in either before or after the last DreamWorks because we did the Apex Summit. And we
2
came
years
in,
ago.
so yeah, very
Yeah.
aware of that, very aware of shutting that city down for sure.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
you shut it down more than we usually do.
Yeah.
I'm sure the neighborhood was not very friendly towards you as you're putting up all the.
Nob Hill and the Fairmont were nope, nope, did not. And that billionaires club that's sitting right in the middle of it. So
Right, right.
Well, they
Yep.
they were torn around the Moscone Center because it hadn't been that clean in a
oh
decade.
God.
However,
Yeah,
but they started moving right back in once we got the discontinue.
yeah,
Yeah.
for
Look,
sure.
the good it's getting better there. Crime reports are down. The city's doing a better job, but for a while there it was really tough. Really tough.
This episode of Managing Your Perimeter is brought to you by First Fence, the experts in keeping what matters most protected. Whether it's a temporary fence for your next big event or a permanent solution for your business, First Fence delivers with speed, precision, and peace of mind. Trusted by pros in construction, events, and beyond, they've got safety down to a science. Need a fence? Get it done right the first time at firstfence.com.
So, I always say this about the work we do. It's not sexy. There's nothing sexy about going in, telling somebody how they have to be secure, giving them, the real dirty details about this is what we need to be paying attention to. We've had a couple of guests. Actually, we did have two of our guests on here that were part of the architecture team that put together the Queen's funeral in the UK. And I mean, we all say it. Nobody wants to talk about security. Nobody wants to talk about crowd management. They just don't. It's not, it. So how do you, when you're approaching your clients, and I know you've had some for a very long time, but let's just use a brand new one as an example. How do you feel like you can go in and kind of win them over and be like, look, we have to have this conversation. Like, how does that, like, how do you do that? How's that approach for you?
All
Well,
of our looks aside, how do you make our ugly sexy?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I was putting a piece of concrete on a piece of fence sexy.
I- look, at the end of the day, I think strategic event security is mislabeled,
Mhm.
right? When people think of security, they think of, security staff in some sort of uniform, some
Anti-frames.
law enforcement, and some screening of some sort, right? The reality of security is we are responsible for that client's brand and reputation risk. If we get it right, if there's no protester in that keynote or gets on that field, if the talent has the ability to do what they are intended to do, if the guests are able to get in and out and they leave that event with, that was a great act, it was a great game, or that CEO's keynote speech, we should look into this new technology, whatever they're pitching, because at the end of the day, that event owner is investing in that guest, that fan walking out and saying, I'm going back. Right. And so it's our job to make sure that guest's experience is, I want to go back. It wasn't too cumbersome and I felt safe. I didn't feel like there was risk. And yeah, I saw those protesters down on the corner, but it really didn't bother me. They didn't get inside the perimeter. That's really the brand and reputation risk. And if we resolve problems in a timely fashion back to the ops center, we protect that branding reputation. When we don't, the knock-on effect of how many hours were put into those ticket sales or hours into that marketing, sell or that sponsorship sell, all that money goes out the door because that guest isn't going to reinvest. They're not going to travel to that event. They're not going to go to it. So our job as security is really protecting their brand and reputation, regardless if there's a security incident. Because think about all the times that you're involved in something that affects you as a security professional that had nothing to do with security. The water issue in Jacksonville, the power going out in New Orleans at the Super Bowl. Those aren't security events, but man, do they affect security quickly, right? Because now we got to change the crowd management plan. We got to change this plan. And so not everything at the event is about security, but everything touches and affects security. And so it's our job to make sure that we do a great job strategically and then tactically at the event to protect their brand and reputation.
So you're kind of saying that we're kind of like valet parking. It's the last thing you see at an event that you went to, and it can make or break it, right?
Yeah.
So for instance,
Right.
I've got a great example of this, and this still sticks out to me. We were in San Diego on a government thing. Do you remember this, Anna? And we went to Kaboo, the music festival. And when we were leaving, the staff there were like, "Thanks for coming." And they just interacted with us in a great way. So waiting for the train to take us to parking or to wherever it was not an issue. It didn't even, we both pointed it out. She's like, "Oh my God, I now feel great about this event." As much fun as it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it's, you brought up parking on the out. They were the first person touched on the in.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just like, the security apparatus, whether it's the perimeter fence, the weapons detection, the screening, the line management, the crowd management, it's the first thing you touch. And the challenge in our industry is we say that, but then the lowest common denominator is that guard that's making $20 an hour. So we push our clients to let us bring in those experts that are in that area, that are adjusting those guards if they're not doing the job that they're supposed to be doing in a timely fashion, and keep them on point, because they're the first impression of every event.
Yep. I mean, it really does go back to guest experience, and guest experience in ours also is, you know, all the people that come to the, inauguration, anybody that comes into the conventions that we work on or the summits that we're putting together. But when you look at all this and you've kind of moved your client along or whatever, do you also go in and talk about like maybe new technology and stuff? Do you like to keep your clients like ahead of the game? I mean, we'll go. I mean, I do. I mean, I definitely attend the different conventions and everything for new product, new types of assets and everything that are out there. And then anytime I can, I try to make the recommendations to the government, and basically be like, look, I just attended this trade show. Someone needs to go check this out. Like,
Right.
someone look this up and go check it out. I mean, do you find that that's what you're having to do with your clients and sort of keep them more current on things? And
All the time. I mean, in one of our advantages is, in addition, 90% of our work is doing the events, but we're still the design consultants on new stadiums and arenas. So I'm working with the Titans and the Jaguars right now on their new buildings. Did Mercedes-Benz Stadium and Levi Stadium and Fiserv Forum and Chase Center. And so we're always staying really current on those technologies, and also seeing if that technology works for a fixed facility like a stadium or an arena that's operating X number of events a year. Can we take that and deploy that at a special event?
Mm,
And frankly, that's how I got, why I started Ingresso Tech, because we had done so much design work on metal detection at stadiums. And University of Alabama called years ago and said, we want to start screening our 100,000 guests
mhm,
that come into Bryant-Denny Stadium. And I said, no problem. Close down some streets. I can make it happen. Fortunately, they had already closed down their streets. University of Alabama Police Department was doing a really good job with their perimeter. And I said, okay, now I need this street and this street and this street. Because I had to deploy 160 walk-through metal detectors. This is pre-weapons detection, like Open Gate and Evolve Express. So 160 walk-through metal detectors, because on one of my visits, I sat down with the senior associate athletic director, Finis Gaston, as southern a name as you could find in Alabama. And he looks at me, he goes, Dan, do not give them a reason to stay home and watch the game on TV.
yeah.
And I said, if the University of Alabama is worried about their guest coming back to their stadium, this is a real challenge. And so when these advanced technologies started appearing, and I had a relationship with Evolve, and I had a longstanding relationship with Chea, and I said, I'm going to be the rental agent for your product, because I want to make sure your product gets deployed the right way. if you can go deploy any technology you want. If you don't have the operational expertise on how to operationalize that technology for that event, the technology fails and the manufacturer gets blamed. So what we do at Ingresso Tech is we will not deploy the technology without our people there to run it.
Mhm.
And we've won a lot of clients that way, and we've kept clients that way because now they don't have to worry about that entry again. They know our team's going to be there. They're going to be on top of the security staff, and they're going to make sure that ConOp works over and over again, and that technology actually helps them. So we stay very advanced on technology, analytics. I've pushed my clients with more video analytics than their legal teams might like to have, but we keep pushing and we keep trying new things at different events, and we've moved into AI X-ray. And I'll tell you a very great story that Paul Matthews, who runs our Ingresso Tech division, just told me this morning. They're doing an event out in San Francisco by chance. And he says, Dan, these two guys walk in, they're straight out of Texas, cowboy boots, cowboy hats, and they put their bags through the X-ray and it alerts, and we can't figure out what it is. We send it back through, it alerts again. We send it back through, it alerts again. There's an image that this new X-ray technology from Evolve is red light, green light for the operator. If there's nothing, it's green light, the bag flows through, no problem. If there's a problem, it's red light, and we have the guest open the bag and divest. And this guy is there's nothing in the bag. And so it was after 3 times, Paul, who runs that company for me, went over and he said, sir, there's something in your bag. The guy finds a shotgun shell that he left in the bag, and it was tucked away in a small pocket. He flew in to San Francisco with that bag.
With a shotgun shell.
Through TSA. Now, I'm not blaming TSA. The point is, we're evolving to AI to say there's still something wrong with this bag, even though the image, whether it's that X-ray unit at an airport or our X-ray unit, there was nothing on the image that showed shotgun shell, but the AI kept alerting. And so the staff was able to, the guy finally was like, oh crap, I took this bag to the range. I mean, listen, innocent mistake. But the cool learning was that got through the TSA infrastructure, but not through ours.
Yeah.
So always looking at new technologies and how can we deploy them. We're using, a product from Wicket. We brand it as digital ID so that you can use your face to get your credential faster. You can use it for access control. So we're always pushing on new technologies and trying to deploy them with our clients.
I love that. No, it's great because we're always looking at different trends, right? And we're trying to figure out and try and stay 10 steps ahead of our clients and make sure that, we come in as the subject matter experts to some degree. I will never profess to understand all the technology, but I know how to make the connections and connect those dots so that our client knows that we're paying attention. I think that's the biggest thing when we go into this is that we're paying attention to what they want. We're paying attention to what's out there. We're paying attention to, the climate. I mean, right now, the climate is dictating everything
Right.
with how we're having to respond to all of this. And so, there's not a day that goes by that PJ and I don't get on the phone and we're like, did you just see what, the news put out or something? And then granted, also in our business, we don't try to get overly sensationalized by what's put out in the media because we work closely also on that end of
Right.
it. So we know some of it is really not true.
Right.
But again, there's just not a day that goes by that we're just like, we're knock on wood, like the way things are going, like we should all be in business for a while. So, yeah.
I think there's tailwinds behind anybody that's in the security space. I think the point you brought up, though, it takes me back. And as a true consultant, our job to our clients is to find them the best solution.
Mhm.
Whether I have that solution or not, I want to find them the best solution. And I don't know, this goes back a little ways, but I was working with Salesforce and the then head of security, a guy by the name of Chris Mann. And he turned to me one day and he said, Dan, I appreciate you and your team because I can call you and ask about this or that. And you'll say, that's not us, but I'm going to find you the best person that it is. And I do that because I want that long-term relationship with that client. I want them to always call me and say, hey, we're looking at robotic dogs. What do you know about them? Well, I know this, and I know this guy's deployed them, and this is what they can do, and this is what they can't do. I think they really appreciate the operational assessment of the technology or the device or the process. Because look, I give my manufacturer friends a hard time. The manufacturer is going to tell you can do everything. And our job is to say it's really good at this. It's not going to work for that. Right. And I think that's our responsibility as consultants to our clients to give them that feedback. They can take it or they can go, listen to the hype in their marketing material and say, no, but they said it does this. It doesn't. I'm just telling you it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, we get that. And and I know that whenever we are on site and we have different assets that we're using and the vendor gets really excited because they get to be right in front of our client, and occasionally I might step in, mostly I don't. If the vendor wants to have a conversation with our client, it's okay because the client invariably comes back to us anyway and says, "What do you think?" And so, I always tell them, I'm like, "Yeah, you're welcome to tell them all those things, but you are a salesman and you are hyping it up and they still are going to put it through the test." So even though you feel like it's answering their questions and crossing the T's and dotting the I's for them, they still need to run it through the military test. So guess what? This is great.
Right.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, but don't get too happy about it yet because it's not sold. So
Right.
I know we call it anti-scale fence, but really you can kind of scale it.
yeah,
Listen.
anybody, anybody that could do good parkour can leap right over that stuff. So,
You know,
um,
I don't think it became very newsworthy, but I go back. Joe Coomer at Mercedes-Benz Stadium is a good friend, and he'll call me from time to time when something happens. He sends me a video. A student at Kennesaw State University, which is just north of Atlanta, who's on a climbing team, somehow gets the desire to see how he can scale the support structure to the roof,
mm,
300 and
I think
some
I've
feet.
heard this story.
It just happened like, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago. And they've got the video. And the guy, it was during an Atlanta United soccer game. So the upper half of the stadium is closed off. Well, he got into that closed area, found the staircase that leads up to the roof access. And it's all access control and it's got, fencing. He cleared that fence like me stepping over the gate, the child gate.
yeah,
He's in the staircase up, and now they've got a video of him on a cross member beam that the engineering team said probably no one has touched that beam since the day it got installed. And he's 350 feet above the playing surface and just walking along as if you're walking down the aisle in the grocery store.
mm,
I mean, thank goodness he had no ill intent. Thank goodness he was as skilled as he was and he didn't fall, because that would have been a horrific scene. But I don't know where people get these ideas. But you said scalable fence. I mean, he leaped that fence like there was no tomorrow. Amazing.
If there's a bad idea to be had, someone's going to have it.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. How involved do you get when there is an incident? So if an incident occurs in, sort of like an event that that you're on site, how involved do you all get, or do you, yeah, I'll just ask that. Yeah.
Our team, when we're on site, typically the event team turns to our team to be the incident and crisis management leads,
Mhm.
because we take them through that pre-event. And so it doesn't even have to be a security incident. And look, I'm not at as many events as I used to be. I've got a great team who are running most of the events we do. But I was, a year ago or so, we're at an event and we're the day before opening, and a stage backdrop partition collapses and injures 2 people, 2
Mhm.
workers, right? And we're immediate response because we had people in the area during load in, and we're helping medical get there to treat. But the client turns to us to lead the now incident crisis management process to say, okay, what do we know? What don't we know?
Mhm.
How are we going to manage this going forward? And the building then comes in and says, I need to see stamped drawings for every stage and backdrop. And now, I can see the production people's eyes light up because they don't know that they've got stamped drawings for everyone. And so now we start managing the process of, well, what if that room isn't going to be used tomorrow, able to
Right.
be used because of the building shutting them down for permits or whatever. So so to answer your question, we end up in the middle of it from the first part. And that was nothing to do with security. It's just that we're really good at managing that process and making sure we hit every point and then saying, okay, let's get back together in 2 hours and figure out what we know now. But, you know, I mean, we've had scenarios where registration isn't flowing as quickly as it needs to. And a client just starts handing out badges without names on it so the people can get down to the keynote. And my guy's like, now we got a real problem.
Yeah.
Right. And has to pull the team together and say, okay, this is what we've done.
Yeah.
Here's the consequences of our crime that we just committed. And now we got to think about how we're going to, remedy this so that we don't have
Right.
unknowns in our for the rest of the event.
Right, you take all that time to find out people's names and everything, and then you're just trying to rush them through. No,
Right.
completely understand. Yeah, that's, yeah. We basically operate the same way as well. A lot of, our client will definitely pull us in, and I mean, it could be as little as getting with the Department of Public Works and figuring out how we're moving snow around.
Right.
Um, and I can, again, going back to the inauguration, I can remember sitting on phone calls, making decisions about this and literally putting them on mute and saying to my staff, I can't believe I'm literally on this phone call with the city making this decision. Like, I have so many other things to do, but okay, sir, let me tell you where we can put all this snow. I'm like,
Right.
don't you do this for a living? I'm like, isn't this what you do?
Right.
But I think in those moments, a lot of times that they are just kind of looking for that outside view on some of these things. Because, they do live it day to day and, we're thinking about it from, the safety and the security side of not being able to let the bad actors in and, keep people safe on the inside. That it is, a conversation about snow removal is part of our plan, because if we can't install our products and assets correctly because there's snow, we have a problem. So,
Yeah, it's exactly true. And again, everything touches security,
Mhm.
right? Security is not responsible for snow removal, but if it doesn't get removed, we can't do our jobs.
Yeah.
So, I have a funny story about snow removal. The Super Bowl in New York. I can't remember what year it was. It was a while ago now. MetLife Stadium. And this snow removal plan is well thought out and well baked. And we're midweek, I don't know, Monday or Tuesday of Super Bowl week. And the forecast is 2 to 3 inches. Well, it dumps like 8 to 10
Mhm.
on the stadium. And so, like, the snow removal plan is in full swing. It's cold. And what they did is they brought in they had these massive melting devices so that they could take the snow out of the stadium and put it into these incinerators and melt it and just keep having. So now our focus is 1000% on weather and snow, right? For the rest of the week. We get to game day. It's like 60 degrees where we built our temporary ops center and what's called NFL control in the stadium was a large, plexiglass front for the decision makers to be able to see the field, which they really don't need to see the field because you got so much video surveillance. It's better to look at the monitors, but you have to take that into control.
Super Bowl, you got to watch a little.
I know. I've seen about 5 Super Bowl plays in 13 games. All of a sudden, it is so hot in that room. We get there at 8 a.m. or whatever, and it is boiling in that room because it's a fishbowl.
Yeah, you're
And
like a Ethereum, yeah.
Frank Sapovitz, who was SVP of events for the NFL time, he comes in and he's like, Dan, you didn't think about air conditioning? What the hell's wrong with you? I'm like, sorry, Frank, I screwed that one up. You know, like it was so warm after dealing with this snow earlier in the week. It was just another Super Bowl memory in the books.
Definitely, for sure. Well, Dan, seriously, I was so delighted when you agreed to come and chat with us. I was really delighted when, all the little dots got connected in the
Yeah.
background. I think more than anything, is there any advice or any sort of, maybe that, I don't know, 5-step plan, that 5-bullet thing that you would sort of give our listeners as, we sort of round this all out and everything about, what you do and how you look at things and how they can, be proactive in things as well.
Well, it's a great question, and I didn't prepare for this, so I'm going to wing it a little bit here.
Wing it.
Um, Number one, I would say, is get your security team involved in your planning early, right? Because the event team comes up with these great designs and they want to do this really cool stuff, and then they pull the security team in too late, and they're like, "Yeah, we can't let them in that door because if we let them in that door, we're going to have a problem over here and here." Get security team involved early. Let them help with designing the overall crowd flow for the event, so that all of those activations, the game, whatever, is going to come off fantastically. Um, Make sure you engage an event security consultant or strategic event security consultant that can look at the big picture and then say, okay, these are the parts that you really need. This is the right posture for this event, right? The NSSE events, we know the posture, right? And you get the resources. But at, my smaller events where I don't have that kind of budget, I can't do everything. So have that security consultant involved that can say, here's what we really have to have for this event, right? And then engage with your local visitors bureau and law enforcement early, because you're bringing that revenue to that city. That visitors bureau is going to be on board. They're going to help best they can, and they might be able to pull some resources together that can help you with the posture of that event. And if that just means if you can't afford in your budget to have all the law enforcement security that you want, well, they'll increase patrols. They'll increase this. That presence makes a lot of difference. And I guess the last thing is, there's no event too small for an incident to have a really tragic outcome. And a shareholder meeting in New York City for a healthcare provider
Yeah.
into a loss of life, and that could have been completely avoided. So it's not about the size of the event. It's understanding today's socioeconomic challenges that we're dealing with, because the old risk, let's do a risk assessment. Well, you know what? Local and federal law enforcement doesn't know about all of these one-off individuals. They're going to drive their car down Bourbon Street at 2 a.m, pull their Tesla up to Trump Tower and implode it, or shoot somebody on the street. So it doesn't matter the size. Get people involved that can help you and put the best plan together you can.
Oh, very good. Amazing. Things that, we think about, and then when people hear about it, they go, "Oh yeah, we really should be doing that." We're sort of we're the people that have to kind of push that reminder. All right. So now give us your elevator pitch here. Come on, it's time to plug yourself. Tell us where people can find you. How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, the easiest, www.stratoscope, STRATOSCOPE.com. Ingressotech for weapons detection, INGRESSOTEK.com. And then Stratos, STRATOS, K9. And that's the new leaders in bomb and gun detection handlers and K9 units.
Love it. I absolutely love it. No, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.